You're listening to the What's Happening podcast with Gary Watts.
Good morning. I'm here with Cheryl Maloney. She's with the Eat Shop in Solon. Good morning, Cheryl.
Good morning, Gary. Thanks for having me.
You bet. How are you?
I'm great.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, where you came from. I always ask my guests a little bit of their background. So if you want to dive into Chicago or dive into wherever, go ahead and dive in.
Yeah. Thank you again for having me.
You bet.
So I was born and raised in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago, in a neighborhood called Mount Greenwood.
Okay.
It's on the far south side, as far as you can go before you hit the suburbs. And it was an area where, in the city of Chicago, like a lot of cities, cops and firemen and teachers, anybody that works for the city has to live in city limits. So everyone on our block, all of my friends, their parents were all cops, firemen, or CPS teachers.
Oh, really? That's neat.
Yeah. And my parents, my mom is originally from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. My dad was from the south side of Chicago, so that's how we ended up there.
How'd they meet?
They met, I don't know, on a farm in Iowa. I think my dad was out there working. And
Really?
Yeah, and they met and dated, fell in love. They were young. My mom had my sister when she was 19.
Wow, good.
And they had 4 kids, happily married for over 45 years. And yeah, my dad worked super hard, put us through Catholic schools, grade school, high school, all the way through. And my mom stayed home, was a stay-at-home mom with us.
What'd your father do?
He was in maintenance for a school district and worked his way up, started out as a janitor, worked his way up to be the head of maintenance for the Ridgeland Public School District.
What school did you go to? What Catholic school?
I went to St. Christina on the south side, and then went to Mother Macaulay for high school. Mother Macaulay's a force for water polo and volleyball.
Really? Where's St. Rita at? I've heard of that.
That's where my dad went.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. Yep. My dad went to Rita. So that's a little bit further north, but yeah, closer to kind of like Midway Airport.
That's where Notre Dame recruits all the football players, right? Mount Carmel and St. Rita.
It's because they're tough there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
They get pretty tough.
So you came from Cedar Rapids. Your husband's Sean, right?
Yes.
And
Came from Chicago. We used to come out to Cedar Rapids every summer because my mom's family's out here. Her sister, they have 4 kids, 2 of which are now Cedar Rapids police officers.
Really?
Yep. And so we would come out all the time for 2 weeks every August and stay with my grandparents. And then when my parents saved up enough money or got sick of, staying with the in-laws and all of that, we ended up staying at the Roosevelt Hotel in downtown Cedar Rapids. Yeah. And when we were kids, we thought that was like the greatest thing ever.
Really?
And I don't know what it is now. I don't know if it's still a hotel, but that's where we stayed.
What'd you do for 2 weeks?
I don't know, just stuff that kids do. Just hung
played?
out. Yeah, played, hung out with our cousins. I mean, it was so fun. And just growing up, we just didn't have a whole lot, and so that was like a big deal. My parents would pile us in the back of the paneled station wagon, put the seats down. It's like you didn't have to wear car seats or anything back then. They put blankets down, and we'd come out. I mean, yeah, the 2 weeks in Iowa were always the best.
Great.
And even though I loved Chicago, there was always like a part of me that loved Iowa too, and I never thought it would fit into my life or what I thought was going to be my life, but somehow here we are.
When did you move to Solon then?
So we moved to Solon in October of 2020, so just not even 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago.
Not too long ago. What attracted you to Solon?
Well, it's funny. We had a lot of things in like 2019, 2020 that happened personally. My dad got diagnosed with esophageal cancer in November of 2019. And then my husband's father, so my father-in-law, he was 80, but had like kind of a abrupt accident where he passed away. So he passed away 2 days before Christmas. And then we were dealing with my dad being sick. Then my dad died in March of 2020. And this is all before COVID even started.
Right.
So we had 2 big losses there. And then when my dad died, COVID was kind of just unfolding where they were closing down the state and everything. So we were at the not the nursing home, the funeral home. and saying like, are we going to be able to have services and everything? They're like, yeah, people, you still have to bury them. People still are going to die. And then no, it came out that no, we couldn't bury him or anything. So we weren't able to have services for my dad because he died, and the next day Illinois shut down. So, yeah, so it was really tough. And
what'd you do with the funeral then? Did you have a funeral?
So we didn't for, I don't know if it was 8 or 9 days until we were able to have the wake. And then even for the wake, we were the only ones that could be there. So like myself, my sister, my brothers, my son, we were the pallbearers for my dad, which is just not the way that it should be.
Right.
So that was really tough. And then we didn't end up having a funeral, like an actual service, until December of that year. So we had kind of all of that. And then crime in Chicago was, like getting really out of hand. And so we ultimately decided that we were gonna move. We just thought, there's just so many signs pointing to just like a new beginning.
Yeah.
And I have a sign in my house that says like sometimes things have to fall apart so you can put them back together. Yeah. And yeah, I honestly believe that's just, it was a rough. I mean, I feel like COVID was rough for a lot of people, like all of the situations around COVID, and it was just really hard for us. And we decided, you know what, let's just move. Let's go. My sister's out here. I mean, my mom is still in Chicago, so that was like a tough decision to leave her, but she was excited for us to leave Chicago and the crime and everything. And my son is her only grandchild, so I think she was excited to get him in like a safer environment. And I mean, we were in the nicest part of Chicago. We were in Lincoln Park. It's like, doesn't get any nicer than that.
Right.
And you pay so much in taxes to not feel safe in your own house. And, we had a neighbor across the street who was a physician. He got held at gunpoint at like 10 a.m. on a Wednesday, like in his garage. Just a lot of stuff that we knew it was a matter of time before it would happen to us. And we were done with it. We were just done.
Well, I think the COVID thing you mentioned, a funeral service, and we take all those things for granted. Then you get into the COVID and everything's locked down, and what happened with schools and kids, and just like funeral for your father, and it was just a hard time for all of us, I think.
Yeah.
And especially when you have a tragic event like that.
It was wild, and I mean, to this day, it's like I must have PTSD or something. My whole family, I'm like, I just feel like I just try not to even like go there because it was awful. And you think, how did we even like make it? But we did.
How's Iowa?
We love it. Iowa's magical. Solon is magical. You asked how we got to Solon.
Yeah.
And when we knew we were going to move, we talked about going south and whatever. And I was like, we don't know anybody. Let's go by family. It's still pandemic time. We're like, who's going to welcome us with open arms other than family during a pandemic? Like nobody. So we looked at houses in Cedar Rapids. We looked at houses and my sister's in Robbins. We looked in Solon, and everyone that we knew out here, my cousins, friends, whatever, they were all like, you have to move to Solon. I'm like, if Solon's so great, how come we've never spent a lot of time there before? They're like, trust me, that's where you need to be. So I was like, okay. So we looked at a house in Solon. As soon as I walked through it, I fell in love with it. It was like it was meant to be. I just felt at peace there. It felt like home. Main Street in Solon was magical. It had enough things. Like Big Grove was a huge part of why we moved there. The Mexican restaurants there, between Frida's and El Sol. It just, I don't know. There was something about it. And I thought, yeah, I could do this. And I remember driving down and looking. There was like 1 or 2 vacant storefronts, but looked like it had a lot of potential. And I was like, this is cool. Like, we can make this home. In Chicago, even though we had every restaurant under the sun, we always went to like the same 2 or 3 places. So Sean and I are kind of creatures of habit. We're like, this can work for us. So we moved out here October of 2020 and started baking out of my house like I was in Chicago. I baked a lot as an adult, but I really picked it up when my dad got diagnosed. That was just one of the things that was kind of therapeutic for me. Felt like yoga, where I could start something and end something and have a product to show for it. And it just really kind of helped me process that whole like grief and everything. That's just where I poured my energy into because I had quit working when I had my son. And so, yeah, came out here, started baking, baked for neighbors, and it just kind of slowly took off from there.
Yeah, as we're getting to the Eat Shop here shortly, but I want to go back into something else that you mentioned that you do. You do marathons? Or you're a runner?
Yes, I run occasionally. I'm an all-in or all-out runner. Like, I'll run, and I'll be like, I love running. I was a pacer for CARA, the running organization in Chicago.
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty solid at keeping my pace.
What
It's not
distance?
fast for marathon.
You were a pacer in a marathon. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
well, I was going to be, but then that's when my dad got diagnosed and whatever. So it didn't actually happen, the pacing part. But yes, I was a pacer. I ran and trained with CARA in Chicago the different times that I ran. And it's an amazing organization. Like, to have, I don't even know, hundreds of people all separated by pace group, and you can meet during the week, but they just did their long runs together. That was like the main thing. It was awesome.
Was that along the lake?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's along
okay.
the lake. It's beautiful. You meet
Yeah.
at like 6 in the morning on Saturday. Yeah, I think it was Saturdays, 6 in the morning. Saturdays or Sundays, I forget. 6 in the morning, you're done by, 8, 10, whatever, depending on how long you're running. And then you have the rest of your day. And yeah, I mean,
They had water stations set up. I think I've been along there and seen that.
everything.
Yeah.
It's one of the coolest, like, just training experiences, because I definitely ran marathons where I did it by myself and ran and did all of the training solo. And then my last one I did with them. And yeah, I shaved an hour off my marathon time.
Wow.
So
What was the name
10
of the
years
organization?
later.
What was the name of it?
CARA, Chicago Area Runners Association.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So what the first marathon, tell us about that. What motivated you to run that far? A lot of people ask that when people do marathons, they start with maybe a 5K, 10K, and but a lot of people think that you're crazy if you do a marathon. Tell us more.
I did. I started running when I lived in Louisville, Kentucky, when I was working my first like professional job, and I didn't know anybody. And so it was just a way for me to get out. Like, I joined a gym and was just like, oh, okay, I'll go for a run, and then started running more and more. And yeah, like you said, signed up for a couple 5Ks, 10Ks, 10 milers, then did a half. And I was like, oh, if I can do a half, I can do a full, And so I signed up for my first full marathon must have been 2007. I don't know. I'd have to look. 2007, 2008 in Chicago. Whatever it was is the one they actually canceled because it was so hot and they ran out of water. So I ran 18 miles, and then they pulled the fire trucks in front of the street and said, marathon's canceled, go home.
Oh,
I was mad.
yeah, that's a tough
Mad
one.
is maybe an understatement, but yeah, I wasn't happy. So then I ran my first official marathon when I was 30. In 2010, I was like, okay, I'm 30. I should run one again. And when I was 39, I was like, I should probably run one when I'm 40, which would have been 2020, which would have been canceled. And I was like, no, I'm going to run it this year. I feel good. I'm going to run it this year. And so I actually ran my second one when I was 39.
Wow.
And that was the one I shaved. So the one that I finished was like over 5 hours. And the second one I think was like 4:12 or something. I don't
really
know.
solid.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
for you.
I felt pretty good about it.
That's a really good time.
But
That's
see,
great.
I run, and then I don't run at all for like
Right.
months and months.
Yeah. Well, now you're in Solon. You just step out your door and go for a run,
Yeah.
right? You don't even worry about anything. You just go, right?
It is wild that you can run here by yourself
Right.
in the woods and
Right.
not be fearful of like
Right.
getting kidnapped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it took me a long time to be able to run with headphones.
yeah.
I wouldn't. I would always run because in Chicago, I never ran with headphones ever.
Right.
Even 10 years ago, I didn't run with headphones.
Or you do the McBride Trail? Do you go to McBride and back? That's like
I usually go to SNRA and kind of run around there and loop back around. I mean, when I'm running, I'm not running crazy far out here.
Right.
I think I mentioned to you I ran a half marathon last year but didn't fully train for it. So the farthest I ever went was 5 miles, which didn't
Right.
really get me very far.
Well, that's neat. You do it. So it's kind of a release, wouldn't you say, that you can go run, you can by yourself, you can be quiet.
Yes.
Think about all the things you got going on, your kids, the family,
Yes.
the eat shop, all
And
the
it
things.
for sure is one of the things that I am actively working to get back into my schedule because I love it. And even if it's just 2, 3, 5 miles, like I don't need it to be 26 miles.
Right.
I don't need it to be 10.
Right.
It is a great like clearing of my brain
Right. Just
and like
release.
reset. Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad to see you in Iowa, first of all. And,
I'm happy to be here.
you know, what's funny is I've been in real estate a long time, and when I'd pick up a couple that maybe come into the hospital here or something, they go, is Iowa just, you know, cornfields, bean fields, hogs and cattle? I mean, what? And they come in this area and they fall in love with it. With a preconceived idea is you're going to Iowa, that's flyover country or whatever they call Iowa.
Yeah.
And, well, there's nothing to do. Well, wait a minute. You know, in this area, it's fantastic. I'm a native Iowan, so obviously I've been here my whole life. But I think it's interesting the preconceived ideas are what they think Iowa is, and then they get into the state. And our treasures are people, like I think you ran into in Solon, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City. Just they welcome you, part of the community, and part of Solon. It's so neat. What a great place to be. And then also the Solon School District's just phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah. It's funny. One of the main things we talked about when we were considering moving Lincoln Park, or moving from Lincoln Park to Iowa, we were like, well, we're in Lincoln Park. We're surrounded by all of these like successful people that are going to have all these connections for our son later in life that like we never had the opportunity to have, right? Like both coming from blue collar, like working class families. And so that was a thing that we discussed. And then we moved to Solon and meet some of the most wonderful, successful, amazing people we've ever known. And so, yeah, we laugh. We definitely laugh about that now.
That's neat. I see a lot of people that are coming into the area from Dallas, from Phoenix, from Vegas, and they're coming back to their families, which are in the Midwest. And they left. You know, both my kids lived in Chicago, one of them in New York City, and they came back home. So.
Yeah.
And enjoyed, you know, kind of that. They missed that Iowa-ness, I guess I call it.
And my husband is from Bartonville, Illinois, which is a smaller town outside of Peoria. So he's from like a more rural, I would say, area. I mean, I was born and raised in Chicago, so coming to Solon is like a bit. Even though, yeah, we vacationed out here, it was a big shift for me. He was more worried that I wasn't gonna, like, that I was gonna go stir crazy or not like it when I got here, and. I love it as much as, I mean, we love it. If you would have asked me, I never would have thought that we would have fallen as in love with Solon and the people and our friends as we have.
Good. So now let's get into the Eat Shop, and let's talk a little bit about I think it was your great aunt.
Yes.
In the 30s had the Eat Shop on First Avenue in Cedar Rapids. Tell us a little more about your great aunt.
Yeah, so my great aunt, and when we were kids growing up, we called her Old Aunt Mary because we have so many Marys in our family that was just, you know, it was my mom's a Mary, I have an Aunt Mare, she was Old Aunt Mary. There's just a lot of Marys, so you had to differentiate somehow. And I just remember her always being in like a long flowered dress, like working out in the garden when we'd come out to Iowa. She, you know, she's like 80, 85, 90 years old. She was in her 90s, maybe late 80s when she died. But a wonderful woman, never married, no kids, was just a beast. Like, I don't know, she was like a beast well before her time. And it's funny because after we opened the Solon Eat Shop, I had a gentleman come in and say, hey, there has to be a connection here to the Mary Ann's Eat Shop in Cedar Rapids, right? And I was like, how do you know that? And he goes, that's my mom on your wall. We have a bunch of pictures in our wall with like the history of the Eat Shop. And he was riding his bike through Solon, saw the Eat Shop, and was like, that's such a unique name. There somehow has to be a connection. Peeked through our windows because we were closed. It was a Wednesday that year, and we weren't open on Wednesdays. And his mom and his aunt both worked at my great aunt's shop. And he said that's all they talked about when he was a kid. They had the fondest memories from her shop and her bakery. And then when he came in and talked to me, he later brought in all of his adult siblings, one from California, whatever, flew them all in to show him the Eat Shop. And they told us that my great aunt gave his parents the down payment for their first home. So he's like, your aunt had the money from her business to loan it to my parents so that they could buy their first house.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And you have some recipes that are 100 years old that you still use, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The recipes, and we laugh because she, just like any baker, she has like a million iterations of recipes, and they're written down, chicken scratch here, basically the same recipe, but then, a teaspoon or a tablespoon less, or a hair here or there, that, less or more. But yeah, the recipes that she used in her shop were passed down to my mom and my mom's sister, and they're the ones that my mom always baked when we were kids, and then my mom taught me how to do them. And so yeah, it's
really
cool.
cool.
I mean, they're 85 to 100-year-old recipes.
I think it's also it's great to see women in business, and your great aunt, that was in the 30s and 40s. So.
Yeah, I mean 1936 to 1950, and she's running it, her and her 5 sisters, no men involved. I don't even understand how that happened back then, because it's like it's hard now to do, And yeah, she ran it. They were all equal partners. They started out in the small space, and then they expanded to the shop next door. And yeah, they eventually sold it to 2 men.
Cool story. Do we have Austin, do we have a picture of...
Oh, yeah.
I think we do have Mary Ann Eat Shop. I just thought, show the folks I think Mary Ann's standing out front of the building, and then it shows your current Eat Shop. Might be kind of fun to... There we are.
Yes.
So
that building is still standing on First Avenue right now. I believe it's a vacant grocery store.
Okay, where's that from Douglas then?
It's on the same side of the street.
Okay.
I don't know which direction. Yeah, further south.
Toward town?
Yes, it's across by, there's like a Hy-Vee down that way.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of across the street. There's a beauty salon, but it's vacant, and there's buildings next to it. They're vacant. I actually looked into it to reopen. The gentleman that owns it does not want to sell currently. So if there's ever any development opportunities there, call me before you go knocking it down. But that's, it's still there. Uh-huh.
And then, of course, you got the Eat Shop in Solon there next door to Mary Ann. It's just a beautiful building.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that building's beautiful. And it's a funny thing. So when I drove down Main Street when we first moved here, there was a little for rent sign on that building. And when we started selling more and more and more, and then we started the wholesale work with Mercy Hospital, I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this out of my kitchen for much longer. So we started looking for commercial space. And Solon is one of those towns where it's not really published. Like, if there's for rent places, you just got to kind of know people. Well, we had just moved here, so we didn't really know. So I go in, I'm talking to, the ladies at Moxie and Mortar and just some of the businesses. And I saw that for rent sign, and they're like, oh, no, the landlords or the owners live upstairs. They don't want to smell food. They specifically said, like, no food, because they're thinking they don't want to smell like French fry grease or whatever. But I reached out anyway. I thought, I'll go into the bike shop. I talked to that guy. I said, hey, can you give me your landlord's information? He's like, no, but I'll give him yours. I was like, okay, fine. So he took my information, gave it to Brian Brandt. He called me later that day, and I said, I didn't think you guys wanted food, but I thought I'd try. And he goes, yeah, we didn't want French fry grease, but we're okay smelling cinnamon rolls and cookies upstairs. So we talked. We met the next day, and I signed the lease. I don't even know if it was February or March of 2021. And then we started construction, and we opened. We could have opened sooner, but because of COVID and supply chain delays and all that stuff, my oven sat on a container in a port for I don't even know how long. But we opened August 7th of 2021.
Wow.
Yeah.
You got great outside seating. And so how did you got started and you were baking out of your house. Tell us how that started to grow. Obviously, you went into this space, but you had the idea. I mean, in your family, you have bakery, and your mother baked, and your great aunt. So how did you grow? How did it start to grow and evolve? Tell us more about that.
I mean, it's really kind of wild, and I feel like in life, especially right now, looking where I was and where I am now, everything kind of leads you to where it is, even though when you're doing it, you don't think that's where you're going to end up. I mean, my mom and her sister, they have 8 kids between the two of them, and one lived in Cedar Rapids and one lived in Chicago. They talked about running a bakery all the time. They both loved baking, always talked about it, wanting to do it, but it's like time, money, geography, just it was never going to work, right? But it was always something you'd kind of overhear them talking about, little ideas. Oh, maybe we could do this farmer's market this one day or whatever. And so when I moved out here and started baking. We baked for the neighbors. They loved it. They told a few people. And I was baking in Chicago, but Chicago, it's a lot of barriers to entry, and I would say it's not very small business friendly. In the city of Chicago, you're technically can't even sell legally out of your house any baked goods. So I knew moving to Iowa that we at least had that going for us, that they had like much more agreeable or lenient cottage food laws where you could bake and sell. At the time, it was $35,000 a year. Now they've since adjusted it, and I don't even know that there's a cap. If it is, it's like very, very high to where you'd be fine if you were baking out of your house. So we did that. I'd made a few pies for the neighbors, like I said, around the holidays. They told a few people. I brought some food to the ladies across the street at Moxie and Mortar. They were like, well, do you have a website? I'm like, no. So then I learned how to make a website, created my website, and Stacy Munson, who was working at Mercy Hospital at the time, was like, would you be interested in selling to Mercy, like to the cafeteria? We would love to have your food. We love to support local. I was like, sure, because I'm always a say yes and then figure it out later kind of person. So I said yes, panicked a little bit, but figured out how to make it. And that's actually how I met Megan Lang. She knew Sarah Clark, who was a friend of mine, and said, hey, I heard your baking business is picking up. If you ever need help in the kitchen, I'd love to help you out. And I'm thinking, who is this nice lady who I just met in the school parking lot? And yeah, took Megan up on it, and she was my very first Eat Shop employee out here, and now is a dear friend of mine.
Great. And you have 16 folks that work for you now.
I have 16 that work for me now between Solon and Iowa City.
So business is growing, and you also cater. Tell us about the catering business.
Yeah. Business is growing. We were open 6 days a week last year, and this year we made the shift to kind of align with the rest of the businesses in Solon to just be open Wednesday through Saturday. Monday and Tuesday are kind of slow on Main Street. So we changed business, and even with one less sales day, we're still growing through the register in Solon. And we're up double digits there. And then we just opened at the University of Iowa College of Law, and catering is kind of in tandem with the law school. That was one of their asks. They said, we were excited to have you in the building, but we do a lot with catering. Is there any way you can cater for us? I was like, sure, I can do that. So we opened up our regular shop there, and I told them, I said, let us get our feet under ourselves before we, roll out catering. So after about a month of being open down there, we just here in the last 2 weeks launched our catering business. And so far it's been strictly law school, maybe a few here or there, but mostly law school customers. And yeah, it's been going amazing. So we're excited to offer it to everyone in Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, basically the whole corridor.
And then how large of an event can you cater? How many people?
We're not doing huge, like we're not weddings and those kind of things. So I would say large, like corporate events, kind of depends what it is. If it's pastry platters and things like that, yeah, I mean, we could do several hundred people if we needed to.
Do you do like food menus? What kind of menus do you have for do you dinner?
So we have a lot of pastry focused things, right? Just because we are a bakery. So we have like a quiche feast where you're getting a bunch of different flavors of quiche that we can bring in and obviously serve warm. We have deluxe pastry platters with fresh fruit and things like that. And then if you want to do lunches, the big thing that we've been doing a ton of are just box lunches. It's like there's a few options obviously in the area for catering, but I think people like something just new, different. It's kind of like if you're in one of those corporate environments where you eat a box lunch all the time, it's nice to get it from somewhere else occasionally too, just change up the rotation. So we do box lunches. We do have burger bars, grilled chicken bars. So we do have some hot food, barbecue pork, brisket, things like that we are serving as well.
Tell us about your website, just so people that if they haven't been to the Eat Shop and so on can
Yes.
get a hold of you.
So if you're looking for any information on the Eat Shop, you can go to theeatshop.com, and there's our Solon menu there, our University of Iowa College of Law menu, and our catering menu are also there. And the main difference between our Solon shop and our University of Iowa shop, Solon is only open for breakfast. University of Iowa is open for breakfast and lunch. and we serve hot lunch there. So you're not just getting cold sandwiches. All of our lunch is made to order, fast casual, but an upscale setting.
So could anybody just come into the law school and have lunch?
Yes, it is
Really?
open to the public because
Okay.
it's a public university, but it's open to the public. There's 6 free parking spaces in the front that are 30 minutes. So if you're just looking to come in quick and grab something, you can always place an order online ahead of time, and you can pick up in Solon or Iowa City. And we also deliver down there. And then there are, because parking's kind of a nightmare around campus right now with all the construction, there's also 6 metered spots for 2 hours that you could stay if you were going to eat, because the law school does have dining for 20, like there's seating for 20 in there. So you can sit and have a meal.
You said you had 16 employees. Tell us, how hard was that to find the folks that work for you?
You know, I don't want to jinx myself here,
Okay.
but the women that work for me, and right now I have all women. We've had I had a young man over the summer that worked for us. My son actually is there on the weekends. He's 7, but he's learning the register and is always there. So if you ever come in on a Saturday, he's usually behind the register taking your order and counting
Really?
your change back. Yeah, so he's in there. But aside from that, it was slow at first. I felt like when you're an unknown commodity and people don't really know your business or know you, it was a little bit harder. So we had our core team, which is still with me today. And then we slowly grew. And I think the more people knew us and the more involved we got in the community, and they started to know me and my family and just the other ladies that worked for us, yeah, we've been able to grow and have amazing talent and have very, very low turnover.
That's great.
Which in today's world is
Amazing.
unheard of. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of cyclists that come in off the trail and come in to eat?
Yes, we
It's a bakery.
do. Yeah, we have a lot of bikers that come in, and actually this summer we put water up front, a water cooler up front, so people could come in, refill their water bottle, obviously free of charge. They can use our restrooms. Like we want to be one with the community and the bikers. We know that if you're coming through Solon, you're supporting the community one way or the other. So we just wanted to return the favor.
Right. I see you got a little watering bowl for dogs too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you got
Watering
everything
bowl
out
for
there.
dogs and some dog treats and stuff we usually have around for sure.
And tell us what you bake? I mean, obviously pies, cookies. Can you go through that?
Yeah.
A little bit about your bakery items, which, by the way, if you've not been to the Eat Shop, get up there and go to Solon. It's amazing, just fabulous. I mean, the cinnamon rolls, I
Yeah.
can't eat one. You know, if I start in, I may have to have 4 or 5.
The cinnamon rolls for sure are number one seller.
Yeah.
They outsell everything 3 to 1.
Oh.
It never changes, no matter what day it is. That's always our number one seller. That is a recipe from my great aunt, and I mean we've tweaked it a little bit here or there. Right? She used to use lard. We don't use lard. We use butter, real butter, and that's one of the things I think. The more I learn, like obviously I kind of eat my way through all of the competition around or any new bakery or place that opens. I'm always hyper aware of who else is coming into the market. Like I think any good business owner should be. And we really just still use real ingredients. We don't care like how much we're making. It's still butter and whole milk. We partner with Dan and Debbie's to get like the best local milk around. And we're just not willing to compromise and use margarine or water or different fillers and imitation flavors on our stuff. And I think you can really taste it in our product.
Old school. I like that.
Very old school. So yeah, cinnamon rolls, pecan rolls, kolaches is a big one. And I would say the main differentiator in our kolaches is none of our fillings are canned. We cook all of our fillings down fresh from scratch. So if you're eating a cherry kolache, we bought cherries, cooked them down, made the filling, and scooped them in there.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a big population in Cedar Rapids of Czech and Bohemian. And
My maiden name is Sokol, so
Okay.
I'm like 99% Czech. Both of my grandmas spoke Czech. I wish
Right.
I knew some Czech, but they spoke a lot of
Sokol
Czech.
Bakery, isn't it, in Newbo?
There's Sokol all over, like
Yeah.
Cedar Rapids. You see it. So yeah, that's my maiden
great.
name.
It's great. But you have all kinds of pies, right? It looks like a
Yes.
cherry pie there. Or maybe
Yep, we have a chocolate French silk pie. French silk and key lime are our number 1 and number 2 sellers. It's It's kind of funny. I mean, it changes based on the holiday, but for Thanksgiving, we'll sell pumpkin, the bourbon pecan, and apple, I would say are our top 3. And then for Christmas, that chocolate French silk, key lime, and we have a cranberry crumble. Those are probably our top 3 for the last couple of years for Christmas.
I'm starting to get hungry. Chris.
That's why I brought you guys a box of treats.
I'm glad we didn't bring it in here. I'd be eating it right now. So tell us again your hours in the Eat Shop in Solon.
So in Solon, we are open Wednesday through Sunday from 6:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. So early morning, we get in there early. We've got bakers in there at 4, sometimes earlier, 3:30 on Saturdays. A lot we're in there. And then we have to take a nap by, the time that most people are just getting started. But yeah, so 6:30 to 11:30 in Solon, Wednesday through Sunday. So you can definitely get us before or after church on Sundays, when you're going through. And then at the University of Iowa, we're open for breakfast and lunch. And the one thing I'll note about that location is we're only open during school, like the school year. So we're closed during the summer, closed during Christmas break, things like that. But we are open 7:30 to 2 p.m. at the College of Law.
Any other ideas on expansion, or are you just taking it slow but sure with a good thing you got going
I don't
on?
like slow but sure. I feel like let's just go for it and run through the wall, and I'll sleep later, I guess.
Okay.
So yeah, we're actively looking for a third location to expand.
Good. Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, or it's just
Both.
both? Really?
Yeah, one or the other or both. I mean, I feel like we have a nice concentration in the Iowa City area, but I feel like there's still a lot of demand there that is untapped. So Iowa City, I feel like for my life would be a little bit easier to go there, but the original Eat Shop location here in Cedar Rapids is always in the back of my mind. I just think that would be super neat to be able to open it almost 100 years later in the same building.
Mary Ann would be proud, wouldn't she?
Yes. Yes. She wouldn't believe it. Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to share with us about family, Chicago, marathons, Eat Shop, anything else you can think of?
No, I'm just really excited for all of the support that we've been given since we opened. The city of Solon has been amazing for us. The University of Iowa College of Law, our contacts there have been amazing partners. And I think that's just one of the things that's helped us grow. My background in sales has just helped me to understand, you're not just selling a product. You have to, give the customer what they want and listen to what they want. And so we've definitely adapted our menu, expanded our offerings, things like that based on, what people are asking for or what they want. And so I hope to keep that top of mind and continue to evolve our business as we grow. But yeah, Solon and the University of Iowa have been great partners for us. And so we're hoping to keep getting that support and as we continue to expand.
Have you ever thought about teaching a class at the University of Iowa, Entrepreneurship 101 or anything like that?
I mean, if they want me to, I guess maybe. I don't know if teaching is my thing.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting, though, the tenaciousness, what it takes to start a business from scratch, how to grow it, how to build it. I think it's a great story.
It is crazy. I mean, I think about where I came from and all of the corporate America background that I have, and how does that help me? It's that's all I did was data analytics, sales projections. And now it's I'm still using all of that. It's just I'm projecting cinnamon rolls and looking at costs. And we always used to joke at Constellation, the only way to have a good year is to have a bad year the year before, right? Because you're always cycling your prior year numbers. So as I'm growing the Eat Shop, that's all I do. I'm obsessed with my numbers and how do I hurdle these big sales months or big orders that we had in prior months or prior years, and how do I keep my trends going up? So
Are you a lot happier working for yourself?
Yeah,
and
and
being in a corporate?
Yes, and I never wanted to work for myself. It was never on my radar I want to be my own boss someday. Nope, I was great, dominating where I was. I thought I was doing that really well. But yeah, now that I've worked for myself, now I can't go back.
That's great. That's great. Well, we're so excited to have you come on this morning. Also, we're excited to have you back in Iowa, in Solon.
Thank you.
To make it part of your lives. And if you've not been to the Eat Shop, I highly, highly recommend stop downtown Solon, right on the corner. You're right across from Big Grove Brewery. You can't miss it, so stop by and see Cheryl. Give her a hello and check out the cinnamon rolls for sure. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you so much.